unknown. Today we present to you the Seekers of the World, the new and global forum for knowledge and wisdom. We and our guests will try to unveil the secrets of the universe, as well as the small day-to-day things that make our life better. We will delve into the hidden and banned medical cures, future science, universal success principles, the self-aware universal consciousness, the real power of the mind, spiritual concepts, and the nuts and bolts of higher conscious thinking, and whatever you like to talk about. Because of the vibration of the show, just by listening, you will be raised to a higher level of consciousness, and we as the host promise you a journey like none you've ever been on. Sit back, put your feet up, and allow for the hidden, the strange, and the unusual to come to you.
Hello, hello. Yeah, this is Aage, and 7,000 miles away from the western United States, we have Diana in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
Yes, hello everybody.
All right. Well, we are going to have storytelling time tonight. And when we were brainstorming this show before we are doing it here, and we came up with some stories that is, some of them are really hard to understand and really hard to wrap our heads around so we can understand what happened. But this is something that is puzzling, and I know you are going to wonder, how did this happen? Well, first, we're going to tell you the stories, and then we will try to give you an explanation of what we think might have happened. And, science now, they've come a long way into explaining the unexplainable. And quantum physics reaches into the universe and pulls some answers back out of it, and we're going to try to explain some of those to you. And we've all heard this saying, that there is more between heaven and earth than what we can understand. And, yeah, the more we learn, the more questions we have. In the past, life was so simple. We didn't even know the questions to ask. And here is one thing that we're going to see if we can get you puzzled on. On September 23 in 1880, there was an incredible occurrence. There was this farmer in Gallatin, Texas. His name was David Lang. And on that day, September 23 in 1880, he was walking off his front porch, walked across the front yard and into an open field next to his house there. And he suddenly disappeared right in front of everybody that was watching. He vanished into thin air. Now this was observed by his wife, his children, and two men riding a buggy close to the house there on the road. Now, the witnesses, they searched long and hard to try to find David, but he was not to be seen anywhere. And after a few days, the grass turned yellow and died in a 15-foot radius around the spot where David Lang had disappeared. And from that, I would suggest that David possibly got caught up in some type of an energy field or brought him out of the physical into a higher vibration or a parallel universe or some type of thing like that. Now, one day now, 7 months later, his kids, they were playing right on that spot where their father had disappeared 7 months earlier. And they could then faintly hear their father's voice, who was calling out for help. And after a short time, that voice faded out and he was never heard from again. Now, after a few decades, people kind of forgot about this incident, and all the way up to when a guy named Frank Edwards, he found out about the story, and he started to investigate. And what he found was quite extraordinary, actually, because he went and looked at the testimonies and the writings of the reports that everything was written up on this, and he thought it was so fascinating. He wrote a book about it in 1959. The book was called Stranger Than Science. And there was another book written about it. That book is called Strange Mysteries of Time and Space. And that was written by Harold Wilkins in 1958. Now, there is a section in this book called Stranger Than Science, and it summarizes the whole incident pretty well. And I'm going to read that to you because it can explain it a lot better than what I would be able to do. David Lang had not taken more than a half a dozen steps when he disappeared in full view of all those present. Mrs. Lang screamed, and the children, they were so startled, and they were just standing there mutely and frozen in time. And instinctively, after a few seconds, they just ran towards the spot where David Lang had been last seen before he disappeared. Judge Peck and his companion, the judge's brother-in-law, which they have been driving by next to the house on the road, and they left the buggy they were riding and raced across the field. The five of them arrived at the spot where David Lang disappeared almost simultaneously. There was not a tree, not a brush, not a hole in the ground, or anything that could explain how he disappeared. And there was not a single clue to indicate what had happened to David Lang. Now the group searched the field around the house and found nothing. Mrs. Lang became hysterical and had to be led into the house. Meanwhile, the neighbors had been alerted by a frantic ringing of a huge bell that stood next to the yard. And they spread the alarm around, and by nightfall, scores of people were on the scene, many of them with lanterns. They searched every foot of the field in which Lang had last been seen for several hours. And they stamped their feet on the hard sod, and they was hoping to find a hole into the ground where he had fallen, but they found nothing. David Lang was gone. He had vanished in full view of his wife, his two children, and the two men in the buggy. 1 second he was there, walking across the sunlit field, and the next instant he was gone. Well, this is the way the book reads. Now, what makes this story so unique is that the five witnesses were right there and saw it all. And that was including a judge. Now, people disappear all the time, but they're usually alone. And a judges don't normally make up stories like this. Now, over the decades, some people have tried to debunk this story. But the written testimonials from the witnesses and the fact that David Lang never surfaced anywhere in the United States, as anybody know anyway, I select to believe that it is true. There are scientific explanations which could throw some light on this incident, and there are portals there are energy centers, there are vortexes. Usually they're located along intersections of ley lines or on large rock beds of crystal quartz. And these portals are not constant, though. They can move around, they move along the ley lines, and they become stronger and they fade out. Now, since the children 7 months later was able to hear his voice, 7 months after he disappeared, I could imagine that he was trapped in some type of a space-time warp. And it would not be just an alien abduction. If that was the case, he probably would not be there anymore. An alien abduction, they usually either bring you back after a while with some lost memories and so on. You know, it's called missing time. Or you just never show up anywhere at all. But according to the kids, he showed up there 7 months later. They could hear his voice. And that makes me think it was not an alien abduction because he was there. Now, the space-time warp could trap him in a place where time stood still. Outside of the physical, you know, time does not exist as we know it. It is all past, present, and future in the present. So, if this is so, David Lang could be trapped there forever. Now, that's not a really good thought, but then again, forever, if past, present, and future exist at the same time, can be just a split moment. Now, this is hard to, wrap our heads around. But in my book here, which you will find on my website, the book Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness, I explain a lot about these kind of incidents, as well as what causes these time warps and so on. So it could be understood a lot better. Now, let me give you my thought expanded here on what happened. Disappearance in front of the eyes of people, it's hard to wrap our heads around because there are some concepts that have been talked about for a long time. The Christians, they relate to it as rapture. Or they say, well, if something like that happens, there's only God that can do that. It's not for us to know. But this rapture, the concept of the rapture, we may laugh at that, but looking at David Lang's story, I don't think we should laugh anymore, because there is something there that could make this happen. Now, other philosophies, they speak of it as ascension. What if there is a scientific explanation that we can understand right now, today? And before we can even think to understand it, we must understand what the universe, everything we see around us, and what we are ourselves. If we understand that, we can start to understand what happened here. We hear of people who have been observed in two places at the same time. Oh yeah, there are recorded, verified incidents where that have happened. There's also more than stories actually about people that have been, they disappeared right in front of people by turning into a bright light, and when the light was gone, they were gone. Now, the first thing after hearing that, of course, that what comes to mind then is, yeah, sure. I'm sure at least a couple of them, people listening to this one, will think that too. Then again, we have this old movie clip from back in the 1930s. There was a Swedish explorer traveling in India, and he had a movie footage of a monk sitting meditating in front of about 5-7 people, and he turned into a blazing bright light and disappeared right in front of them. Now this monk, he had told the people that he was going to go away, and it was more like not a goodbye, but it was a farewell, see you later type of incident. Now, in order to understand this also, let me give you something to think about, and then I'll ask you a question. Now, I've told this on other shows before, but it is so important to help us understand what we are and what the universe is, that I'm going to repeat it again. Science has found that matter and energy cannot be created from nothing. But then again, some of the sharpest people on the planet, like Professor Stephen Hawking at Cambridge University in England and most other theoretical physicists, they agree now that this whole universe we are living in was created from nothing. If the whole universe was created from nothing, and everything in it was created from nothing, and you are in this universe created from nothing, what are you? Okay, I paused on purpose there because I want you to think. If that is the case, what are we? The thing is that there is not only theories now based on equations proving this particular thing. There are now tangible scientific experiments proving we live in a holographic mind-created universe. If you study quantum physics, you will find those. If quantum physics and spiritual science is correct, there is nothing outside of you. But still we see things. But if we're nothing, there is only one thing that can do that, and that is thought. What we see outside of ourselves seems so solid and so real because two different substances vibrating at the same frequency will seem real and affect each other. Everything outside of us in the physical is a mind-created illusionary movie, and you are the star in that movie. Let me give you something else to think about. As proof of the fact that the mind can create absolutely anything, I want to mention hypnosis. Now, I've been doing hypnosis for decades, and haven't done much with it lately except for self-hypnosis, but it is there. The concept is solid. If I set you down in a comfortable chair and put you into a deep hypnotic state, and told you that when you wake up, there will be an elephant standing next to you in the room. When you woke up, there will be an elephant standing next to you in the room. How could that be? If you reached out and touched the trunk of that elephant, you could feel it. It will be solid. You can feel the texture of the skin. It will be there for you. The trick is that you will be the only one to see the elephant. Obviously, because there is no elephant there, except in your mind there is one. And to you, the elephant is real. I think we have run over a little bit here on the commercial time, so maybe we could go to break, and then we will pick it up here in 2 minutes.
Are you ready to get back to basics with your mind, body, and spirit? Tune in to Essentially April with host April Brandkamp. April is a natural wellness advocate and a compassionate healer. Tune in Monday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Time only on Beacon of Light Radio.
Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and so does psychic medium Bob Brown. England's renowned paranormal investigator will explore the world of the unknown with special guests that will thrill and expand your mind. Tune in to Over the Rainbow with host Bob Brown every Wednesday and Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and 8 p.m. in the UK, right here on Beacon of Light Radio.
Have you imagined your life being different? Are you conflicted with who and where you are and who you ultimately envision yourself and your life to be? Let Dr. Simone be your guide to finding your symmetrical self. As a doctor and certified life coach, she has transformed the lives of many and is qualified to help you in many aspects of your life. Reach out today. Your new beginning starts now. Dr. Simone is on Sundays and Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Hello, here we are again, back from the break. And we're going to continue a little bit about the explanation here of what actually could have happened to David Lang, and a little expanded on that to what we are and the universe is. So knowing this, that you actually could see an elephant standing next to you in the room if you were under hypnosis, it should tell you a little bit about what you are, what the universe is, and your surroundings are. Now see, the mind creates our existence as well as our experiences. Now within this concept is where ascension and the rapture lies, all in the physical existence. Everything you see and experience is mind created, and when you understand that you are the one who is creating it all within the universal mind, you can also alter your holographic projection you are walking around in. You can direct it more to your liking. You can create what you like instead of the garbage that we might be going through sometimes. If you have full conscious and subconscious understanding and belief that both you and everything outside of you can be altered at your will, then all you really have to do is to change your mind. You can make that happen. See, if you feel you have learned everything that you came here to this ball of mud called Earth for, then you can leave. So think about that. Your mind controls everything. And this is attainable for everybody through spiritual awareness, or illumination is sometimes called, or also another term is city consciousness. That is when you have full knowledge of being one with the universal consciousness and able to bring it to conscious understanding. At this stage, you are only mind. The physical is then irrelevant, and you only keep it for purposes of interaction with other people and your environment around you. So you are in control. Now, I've written extensively on this also in my book about the spiritual science. Now, with David Lang, he most likely disappeared because of another reason, that he left the physical. Earth has an energy grid around it. There is ley lines, energy vortexes, or natural or artificially created rifts in the fabric of space. These rifts are created by severe thunderstorms, the energy vortexes, crossing of ley lines, or even by the mind. David Lang very likely walked into one of those rifts in time and space and walked through it while it was stronger, while it was open. And then it closed behind him. See, these rifts, they do not necessarily stay open very long. It is when the energy, it cycles, and it is at its peak, that's when you can walk through. Or something from the other side might come through into our side. That could be a scary thought. There are also alien technologies that can cloak someone while they are taking them or taking them away. That is just a technologically created bubble or funnel where light flows around it. So what's inside the funnel, we cannot see. Now, there are several systems of technology like that. One of them is phased sound. There's a frequency that actually, this phase sound is a frequency that matches both sound and light. So the light does not bounce off the object, so it travels and can hit your eyes, so you will be able to see it. It's somewhat similar to a laser beam, only that is pure light. The reason that light as we see it outside is because it's slightly different frequencies, so the peaks and the valleys of the wave front that just touches each other and bounces it, spreads it out. In a laser beam, they're all phased, so they vibrate at the same frequency, which makes it stay in the same, inside the same beam. So here is something that, if we think about it, the mind is control of everything. Now, it may not necessarily have been David Lang's mind that created this, but it is still within the concept of the universal mind. So if he is trapped in this time warp, he could still be there now. Boy, that really just boggles the mind, but I guess that's as far as we can outthink this situation. And then I guess we'll leave this one alone. Diana has run across a couple of stories that, or one particular anyway, that is very interesting and is very well documented. And it was covered on TV as well as in the media. And this one is hard to diffuse or explain away because it really did happen. So, Diana, are you still there?
Yes, of course.
All right.
Well, yes, a curious incident took place in Tokyo in the year 1990. A man just normal looking and normal dressed came to check in with a passport from a non-existent country. So you can imagine the surprise produced by the authorities. He himself was very shocked as the Japanese custom officials detained and interrogated him in order to find who he was. He also didn't recognize the way the airport looking. They checked his passport and they found out that it was 100% real and has also custom official stamps by Japanese custom officials from previous visits. The man explained that he is coming to Japan on a regular basis because of his business, and he had never had an issue before. He mentioned that his country, so that non-existent country, it is on the earth, it existed on the earth for 1,000 years. And also he could speak a language that he said it was well known all over the world. But the language sounded completely unknown to the officials and to the other people in the room. Well, the things got alerted as they continued with the interrogation and everything was unexplainable. So they put the man under surveillance about 14 hours with guards watching for him all this time. However, the man simply disappeared mysteriously with his luggage and never appeared again. Of course, this case was discussed and researched, but they never found an explanation, except of the theory of multiple universes that could explain so many similar cases of disappearance. This was also not the first time happening. There is also another one mentioned, a similar case in 1954 and one before 1900. And except of a few big events like Philadelphia experiment and Montauk experiment and some others, there were many cases like this one, buried and forgotten, even though they were observed by many eyewitnesses. Like for example, it was also a professor in Venezuela 40 years ago that disappeared under the eyes of lots of students and never appeared again. Or a woman in Bogota, she was filmed as she was walking on the sidewalk and she suddenly vanished, and that could also been seen in the camera. It also happened that I personally know a place in the town where I lived before I came in Germany. It is a forest in Transylvania called Bacho, where very, very strange phenomena happen all the time. Researchers from the whole world go there to study about the strange things happen there. The trees are growing in a very, very weird way. People are disappearing all the time. And there are also people, they went in the forest, they took picture, and after that in the picture you can see strange faces, like they were made of light. This place, it is considered to be the Bermuda Triangle in Romania, and it seems that this area is a junction of two or more dimensions. But finally, how can we explain all this? Is it maybe somewhere a duplicate from me and you living in a parallel universe? And is it possible to slip to another dimension through a kind of shortcut? Or maybe is it possible to communicate with the beings living in there, or to contact another me living in a parallel world? Well, according to the quantum physics, it is possible. String theory tells us that there are many parallel universes existing like huge vibrating membranes, and by colliding from two membranes, a new universe will be born. Similar was discovered also by CERN in Switzerland by the particle collider. So in essence, they managed there to simulate the first second after the Big Bang, and the Higgs boson was discovered, which they call the God particle. But anyway, this is a topic for a whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're coming up on a break here, so let's just go to break and then we can come back and maybe try to analyze this one just a little bit further.
Yes.
Don't miss The Beacon with Jennifer Falah, the show that shines a light through the dark, educates, and empowers those searching for hope. Learn about the levels of heaven, how to positively create, and to meditate to build a stronger connection to the divine. Join Jennifer as she shares information acquired through communication with archangels, interdimensional meditation, and years of psychic experience and research. Tune in each Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for this empowering show, only on beaconoflightradio.com.
Are you plagued by nightmares, negative self-talk, depression, anxiety, or even strange occurrences in your home? You may need an energy cleanse healing or house cleanse to clear this from your life. Marcy Howell is a divine healer who can help you remove these negative energies from your body and space, as well as help you communicate with a loved one who has passed to find closure. If you are seeking a fresh start and outlook on life, contact Marcy Howell at divinehealings.co or find her on Facebook.
You're up for a treat, embarking on a journey of love and abundance. Tune in to Universal Treats with intuitive coach and healer Thomas Johansson. Open your mind and heart to reconnect with your divine self and natural birthright. Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 8 p.m. Scandinavian Time. Only on Beacon of Light Radio.
Hello after the break. So, anyway, through the string theory researches, they discovered that extra dimensions that we are not aware of. There should be 11 dimensions assumed as possible. The head of all physicians involved in the string theory is Edward Witten, considered to be the new Einstein, if not even more. Finally, quantum theory and string theory recognize a symbolic relationship between cognitive awareness and the universe, because actually a universe cannot exist unless it was mind-created. So the mind influences matter and matter influences mind is a two-way street. According to the theory from Copenhagen in 1925, physical systems do not have definite properties prior to being measured. The act of measuring affects the system. So, simply said, that means that the particle behavior changes when an observer interacts. Remember the saying, if you change the way to look at things, things change. There is also the famous double-slit experiment that blew the mind of the scientists involved as they discover that the particle exists in the same moment as well as a wave, in different places simultaneously. As soon as the particles are observed, they change their form back to wave as if they play a game. The electron decided to act differently as though it was aware it was being watched. And on the other side, the observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing it. So this could explain a lot. But the truth is that anytime when we get an answer to all these questions, we get more and more questions. And the deeper the research goes, the more questions will appear. It is a never-ending story, no matter if we look to the macro universe or micro universe. We can also shortly relate to the seven principle universe provided by Hermes Trismegistus long before Moses saw. He told us at that time what science would discover few thousand years later. So I will just remember the seven principles, so think about they were said few thousand years ago. So, one of them, the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. 2. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in, all the things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect and every effect has its cause. The principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principle. The principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Like and unlike are the same, but different degrees. And the most known of the seven principles is the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. So the Kybalion. Aage, what can you say with your knowledge? Because I know from your book that you have some special knowledge about this stuff.
Well, yeah, I don't know about the special part of it, but I have a little bit of an idea of what could happen in cases like this. You remember before I mentioned that on strange thing can happen on if there's a lot of quartz crystals in the ground.
Yes.
There is a place in southern Arizona that hardly anybody knows about except for the Native Americans. And that is an area where there is 10 or 15 acres worth it's kind of like on a mound. The whole mound is a bed of quartz crystal.
Okay.
And in there, there is strange things happening, especially when there is thunderstorms going over. The Native Americans have said that they have known some of their people that has been standing on that ground and just vanished into thin air. Mm-hmm. They have also seen strange creatures suddenly showing up there and then disappearing again. And especially when there are thunderstorms going over, which will increase the frequency of the environment which they are submerged into. They're saying that they can actually walk into another reality where things look somewhat similar but slightly different, and then they have been known to come back again. Now, these are Native Americans that say they have experienced this. And that could make sense to me because in a thunderstorm, I've seen this as a pilot. When you fly and you see a thunderstorm with green color or green hue inside of it, you want to make sure that you stay away from that, because that is a highly electric charged area. There was an incident where an airplane was flying in for landing in Miami, Florida. And right outside of a position about 5 miles away from the runway, the airplane disappeared from radar. And then it showed up again right before it landed. And there were thunderstorms in the area. There was very highly charged electrical storms. And the thing about it is when they landed, the clocks in the airplane were all 2.5 minutes off. Like it disappeared right outside of what we call the outer marker, which is about 5 miles from the end of the runway, to the point where it landed. That distance did not happen because the clocks did not run in the airplane. So, thinking about this, there is something here that perfectly well in that forest in your country over in Romania,
Transylvania.
it could be things like that.
Yes.
Or it could be that there are vortexes or crossing of ley lines on a vortex. That makes it very strong and very much active.
Yes, they also mentioned they also mentioned that when they go in the forest, the watch doesn't work, and the battery from mobile will be drained instantly, and there's also technical stuff happen there.
Yeah. I wonder how clocks and radios and stuff work in there. That could be interesting also.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We still got a few minutes left here before the breaks. There's a story that I've been kind of sitting on. I haven't really talked much about it, and that is how I got much of the information in the book.
Oh, yes.
So I knew I was going to be talking about it sooner or later, and I guess now is as good a time as ever, because we were going to talk about strange stories anyway. So I wonder here how close we are to the break. Let's see. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left. So I would say that the reason I didn't talk much about it is because of the stigma that usually goes along with things like this, because it's hard to wrap our heads around and understand. But there is something called a universal download. And that is when the whole universe, or parts of it, is downloaded into your mind in full concept and detail with full understanding. Now, this is not unique to me. It has happened to quite a few people over time, and there are several famous scientists and inventors that have had this happen to them. Nikola Tesla said he had an experience like that, and that probably explains some of the reasons why he was able to do what he did, because he had remembrance of what he saw. Now, very few of them talked about it, of the people that have had this happen to them, because of, they didn't want to sound too crazy, I guess. Excuse me. I have a saying that relates exactly to this, and that is, for the one who has not had the experience, no explanation is possible. For the one who has had the experience, no explanation is necessary. And if we understand the universe, we will also understand that this download is very possible. And why it happened to me was probably because I have been meditating for several decades, practiced subliminal photography, and developed an active channel through the subconscious mind all the way out to the universal mind. And meditation is the most important ingredient in, possible to understand how something like this could happen. And what I was seeing, it came in kind of like in a stream. When you have the download, and what I was doing, I was tapping into that universal consciousness. And when you get that download coming, it flows. And this is what psychics are tapping into. Now, some of them are better than others, and it is also the state of mind inventors and physicists and people, they're submerging themselves in it, and especially for a physicist, they're tapping into this mind. They sit and stare at equations, trying to find answers. Or when inventors, they get this brilliant idea, and especially one place where you can get those ideas are in the shower. God, I've had some really good ideas in the shower, and then you forget them. But I always, now anyway, and for many years, I've had a small voice recorder with me in my shirt pocket that whenever I come up with something brilliant, or I think it is, then I just grab that thing, talk in a few keywords or talk a little bit about it, and then put it back in my pocket, so that way I know I will not forget. And what happened to me is that I was sitting in deep meditation. And I tell you, though, we're getting pretty close to the break here, so let's go to break now, and then I will go into the actual incident where it happened to me when we come back.
Okay.
Welcome to Beacon of Light Radio, a guiding light in the storm of life. Do you want to connect with inspirational spiritual guests? Have fun while quenching your thirst for metaphysical teachings. Then set a reminder for Kimla & Company with host Kimla Dodds, international best-selling author, psychic medium, astrologer, and feng shui practitioner, every Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Come be a part of the show by joining us in the chat room or calling in for support or a free reading. We are waiting for your light on Kimla & Company. Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Beacon of Light Radio. And until then, may the angels protect you and guide you.
Okay, we are back, and now we're going to get into what actually happened to me and how some of that information that you will find in the book made it to the written page. Now, if we understand this universe, we will also understand this download is very possible. I was sitting in deep meditation. And when I do go into meditation, I find myself in a state of mind where I have no sensations of my surroundings. Everything is gone. And that is when you communicate the best with the universal mind. Because all the clutter, the private conversation going on in your head all the time is no longer there to clog the channel. And I was sitting there and started to feeling warm. In fact, I got pretty hot. And then there was this light that started to come up behind my eyes, or it's in my head. It flooded me. And I was sitting in this ball of light. I'm sure nobody else could see it, but I could see it in my mind's eye. And I started to see flashes of things, people, creative concepts. And it's kind of a boiling soup of everything that was created, planets, events, future creations, past creations. It was all flashing in front of in my head. it was flashing through what I presume was other people's thoughts and creative concepts and so on. What I saw was not in front of me, it was in my head. It also seemed to latch on to what I thought was more so things that I had an interest in. Because I noticed later that there was a lot of things that probably could have been there, but I did not find it. So I think it was relating to what I was interested in. Now, in a matter of about 5 seconds, or possibly more, maybe no more than 10 seconds, it was all over. And then I just sat there with all these images flooding in my head. It was impossible to think about anything other than what I had seen for several minutes afterwards. It was overwhelming, and I started to wonder, gee, what do I do with this? Why did this happen, and so on. I took a writing tablet and a pen, and I started to write down what I had remembered. And I sat there writing for 3 days, plus or minus things that I had to do, kind of like eat and do work and so on. I felt like telling somebody, but I also realized that would be an easy way to get labeled an idiot way before its time, so I didn't do that. But I did talk to one guy. He's a very well-educated man, level-headed. That was a couple of 3 days after when it happened. A lot of it was written down by then. And I told him what I had experienced and seen, and I asked him, I've ever heard about this, and he said no, he wasn't sure he ever heard about that, but what I tried to explain to him, it made perfect sense to him. And he said, quantum physics speaks of this, and go up to the library and get the book, The Self-Aware Universe, and read it. Well, I bought the book, and I read it, and there it was. Well, the concepts anyway, and it was not quite the same in the details, because I'm thinking possibly that science haven't reached that far yet, but I saw a lot of the things that I had seen in that book. And over the next days or weeks or even months afterwards, I kept writing down things that I remembered. And some of it I've written about in the book, and there are things that I cannot write about yet, but I will. And I also added some of my own research around the concepts that I had seen and experienced. So I added that also to the book. So it explains the universe very well, how it is put together, how it works. And I explain also how to tap into that universal mind for knowledge, wisdom, and resources. And what you create in your existence is not a function of working with your hands or even with your brain. It is a function of being tapped into the universal consciousness and allow for the flow of information, knowledge, and resources so you can create in your physical existence, and also being able to tap into the universal consciousness and allow for it to create great things in your physical existence even without your knowledge. You can ask the universe to create things for you. But we got to remember, the universe, or where this request goes, is outside of the physical. In the physical, we have a restriction of time and space, physical languages, and even electrical brain frequencies that creates conceptions of reality around us also. So we got to remember, what is the brain? The brain is also a physical thing, partially. That physical thing is also in the physical universe, which means it is mind created. But the mind creates the brain as an interface tool into the physical creation. So if we think about this, it can explain a little bit about how it happened to me. When I'm tapping into that universal mind, and a lot of times people have specific incidents in their life that prompt something like this. I think that incident for me is more so probably because I've been meditating for so long, building up towards it, and it just kind of happened when it was supposed to, without my knowledge. And this was about 4 years ago, and a lot of it I remember, a lot of it I have written down, and there are some of it I don't remember anymore. But when things happen, it kind of pulls it out because of my experience with mental photography and having an easier access to that photographic memory, I can be able to pull things out of this so I can understand it. And this is something that is an ongoing thing. There will be another book where I will speak more of the details, but a lot of those details will be a little bit more difficult to understand if you don't understand the concept behind them also. And that's what this first book is all about, getting the foundation to build a house on. And I think that the two books, the one that is available now and the next one, they will go together to explain it all. I will speak about inventions that I've seen in there. There are free energy concepts. There are a lot of things that I saw them working, and I will be making a drawing of some of those, and we'll have some fun with that. So I think we're getting close to the end of the show here, and we're going to wind it down a little bit. I remember before, Diana, you mentioned that there was something that you were wondering about. That what was that?
Yes, I wonder if you remember if there was something, a certain event in your life prior to this experience, something like could link you to this experience. So let's say if you were meeting some unknown person for the first time, or having some kind of unusual sensation, like your hands palm were burning, or strange feeling behind your eyes, like stinging pain, or maybe suddenly involuntary muscle spasm, like your head was turning involuntary from right to left, or something like that. Can you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand what you mean, and that happens very often to people when they have these experiences. A lot of times, the traumatic experience, it could bring on something like this when you're trying to find solutions to what happened to you. And I would say probably that also could be a part of it, because I had a kind of a traumatic experience before that time, and I was trying to figure out, why did I create this? And I was trying to find solutions. So, yeah, I think there could be something like that. But at the time it happened, it kind of came on just without any warning. There was just in that meditation, it just kind of came to me, and it just kind of happened. So I'm thinking that it's probably just a progression of things, because I've been very concerned about how do I outthink this situation. And, well, I was able to outthink it by doing that, because sometimes when something negative happened to you, you take that and roll it into a ball and you create something good out of it. And
Yes.
I did.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So I was able to do that, and that was good. So. And I think we're getting pretty close to the end of the show here, so we will, I think we got about 30 seconds left, and then we will do another show next week. And in the meantime, Diana and I will sign off for you here. So I guess this is it for this time. So I thank you for tuning in and listening, and I hope you enjoyed at least some of it. So we will talk to you again next week.
Okay, thank you for being there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.